Hello, everybody. This is Steve, one half of your host team of Rogue One Radio, and this is our very first episode of the patron exclusive Comic Cuts series. On this series, we are going to take one single comic book issue, trade paperback, or graphic novel and discuss it. Just kind of give our thoughts on what we enjoyed about it, if there was anything that we didn't like about it, and just kind of give our overall thoughts of the comic book in general. And on each episode, likely to have a different co-host every time. For this very first patron exclusive episode, I have Dave Brown with me. Dave's been a friend of mine for a long time, and we share a lot of common interest. And yeah, so welcome to the show, Dave.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I appreciate you asking me. This is fun.
Yeah. So if you have been a longtime listener of Rogue One Radio, you might remember that Dave was on the show way back when we did a Superman episode. So
yeah, it was you, me, and Blue. We were all in your office or / bedroom trying to record with two mics, and the logistics of that were real bad.
Yeah.
I'm sure it sounded great. I'm sure it sounded like ass, but hey, it was fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. So I found it only fitting that Dave and I talk about the first issue of the new run of Superman. Obviously you can't see this because this is audio, but the cover says Dawn of DC, and then says Superman. So I kind of wanted to start off with, what is this Dawn of DC thing? Because I'm not fully understanding. It's not really a reboot.
No, it's like their new initiative. So this is coming out of Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths, which was mediocre at best.
At best.
And so it's part of that. There was God, what was it? Lazarus Planet, I think, is going on right now. And I've read like the Shazam related stuff. I've read mostly because there was a Shazam series that followed around Mary Marvel, because I'm still going to call them Captain Marvel and Mary Marvel and whatnot. That was hands down the best anything Shazam related that has been released in like 20 years.
Interesting.
It blew away the stuff that Jeff Johns did in the New 52. Because that's going to be a conversation for another day. Because I have real issues with the way that Billy Batson has been portrayed in the newer comics and in the movie, because he's kind of a dick. And the whole point of his character was that he wasn't a dick.
Yeah. That's definitely a conversation for another time.
But I digress. So Dawn of DC it's an initiative to kind of, I don't know, it's kind of like Rebirth was. It's not a reboot. It's just a, hey, we've come out of this big event and here's what we're going to do going forward. I'm sure there's going to be another big event coming soon, because God knows they have to do one every 6 months and it's so annoying.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this particular Superman comic, about a year ago, the ongoing Superman title, which had started with when Brian Michael Bendis came on to write Superman, they started over with a new number 1, which was dumb. And because they had just started with a new number 1 in 2016 with Rebirth, but I digress. So that was ended. And then they had a series, Superman, Son of Kal-El. Because at this point in Action Comics, Kal-El goes off to War World and he's off fighting Mongrel, and he finds this basically group of Kryptonian refugees, and that's actually a pretty good story. And what's good about it is they actually get to the heart of the character. Now there were some things through like Dark Crisis where Superman was aged up, he was losing his powers. All of that was real dumb. Most of that's been reset. And a lot of this reset started with Action Comics number 1050. Another thing that happened, and this ties into what's happening in the issue we're talking about, is everyone's memory, for the most part, well, most everyone's memory has been reset, so they don't remember that Superman was outed himself as Clark Kent.
Right.
So that's gone. They used Manchester Black to do it, and it basically killed him. And Lex Luthor was the one behind it. So that's all the preamble getting us to where we are right now.
Okay. So Superman number 1, basically kind of basically like a starting point for new readers in a way, I think is what they're getting at. So Superman's back on Earth. Nobody knows that he's Clark Kent. So we kind of get in a roundabout way, kind of a fresh start. One thing would you agree with that?
Yeah, there's always this theory that starting with new number ones is a good starting on point because, well, it worked when they did the new 52. Sales went through the roof for a couple of months, and then they fell off because there wasn't good quality control with that. But the comics industry in general has gotten it in their head that starting over, renumbering is a big deal. And actually, it really goes back to X-Men number 1 that Jim Lee did the artwork on. Yeah, with Chris Claremont, because that's, I think, the biggest selling comic of all time.
Yeah.
We could ask Rob Liefeld. He knows for sure, because he's going to tell you that at least one or two of his comics are also one of the greatest selling comics of all time. If you ever listen to his podcast, he mentions that like almost every episode. Anywho, so yeah, I think there's this idea that it's a starting on point. I don't buy it. One thing I really liked, then this is a little aside, I apologize, but one thing I liked when they started the Rebirth series DC did, and they started all their new series, they would put whatever the storyline name is on the cover of each issue. So it would be like whatever the fuck part 1. And you would go through that. So you could pick up a single issue and go, oh, this is a start of a new story. And even if you hadn't read the other ones, you could pick up and go from there.
Right.
To me, that's the better way than constantly renumbering.
Yeah.
There's also the idea of, oh, maybe this will be worth something. And the speculators out there are getting all the variant covers, which another thing, they got to stop with all these variant covers. It doesn't mean anything anymore. Just stop. There's too many.
So my problem with the renumbering, and Marvel is guilty of it too, is that it gets confusing when you're looking for certain issues. You're like, okay, is this the number 1 that started in 1990? Is this the number 1 that started in 2014? Is this, and so on and so on. You're like, I don't know which one I'm looking for. So you have to remember who the writer is, which in most cases you would, but if you're not, a huge comic book nerd and remember every writer's name, you're not going to know how to find these.
Yeah, you're right. Marvel's super bad about it.
Yeah.
They're just like, oh, someone farted. Here's a new number 1.
So this Superman number 1, I don't know if this is if this is the start of his run, but it is not Brian Michael Bendis anymore, thank God. It is Joshua Williamson.
Yeah, and interestingly, Joshua Williamson also wrote he wrote Dark Crisis, which again was just not great.
Right.
And did he? I'm gonna have to see if he wrote Superman War World. So continue.
So, well, what I want to say, and it's specific to what I've read so far in. By the way, this issue is called Chapter One: Voices in Your Head, written by Joshua Williamson, and the art, including the cover art, at least the one I have, I don't know if there's a variant, is done by Jamal Campbell. Now, what I want to say about Joshua Williamson, first let me back up and just so you understand, I have not been reading Superman much at all because I did not like Brian Michael Bendis's take on the character. I didn't like what he was doing with them. So the first thing that jumps out at me when I first read this story is I think Joshua Williamson has a better handle on the character.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I've listened to some interviews with him. He knows DC Comics through and through.
Yeah.
Which is, it makes it even more mind-boggling why Dark Crisis was so mid. But yeah, he's got a much better handle on the character than Bendis did. And
so I don't want to say that I don't like Bendis, because I liked just about everything of his I read when he was with Marvel. I have not enjoyed any of his DC material.
I don't think I ever read any of his Marvel stuff because I'm not a fan of Marvel comics in general.
Marvel, so that's understandable.
But I think his writing sensibilities does not fit well in the DC Comics universe.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe if he was writing something like The Authority, I could see that maybe working because that's an edgier title. And,
yeah. So the book starts off, like I said, Superman is back on Earth, and it kicks off with him in a battle with Livewire, and then kind of transitions to Lex Luthor in prison, and you get this idea that Lex is not all that like he thinks he is. And then we find out that Lois has taken over the editor-in-chief job of the Daily Planet from Perry White. So we get kind of a different look at her.
Yeah, and sounds like she's going to be a hard ass as a boss.
Yeah, I did get that. And then as we further progress into the story, we jump into this whole Supercorp kind of story going on. There's and of course Lex Luthor is behind it. And it you know what used to be LexCorp is now Supercorp. So they're basically trying to use this corporation to help out Superman be a better Superman. So
yeah, this is an interesting. This is something I've never seen done before, and not that I've read everything Superman related, but this is I think this is a kind of a cool little twist, because the thing is, Luthor's gone to jail for a long time, probably not, but he's in prison, and he's decided that, and by the way, he remembers that Superman is Clark Kent. He's decided that he is going to give his company to Superman to run.
Right.
And he has Mercy come out and talk to Superman about it. But there's a catch. If Superman says, I don't want it, walks away or whatever, the company shuts down, and all these people lose their jobs.
All the employees, yeah.
Yeah. So Superman, being the good person he is, he's not going to let that happen.
No, he's not. So yeah, I have to agree. I kind of like this little thing they're throwing in here with the Supercorp, and I really am interested in seeing where they go with this, where they go with this.
Yeah, me too. I think at the end of the day, it's just going to be about Lex trying to manipulate Superman.
Yeah, for sure. So the end of the story, we get this picture that it can only be Brainiac because it doesn't look like anybody else. So we kind of get a bit of a cliffhanger here at the end. But I've got to say, overall, I really enjoyed the issue, and I'm looking forward to more readings of the Joshua Williamson era of Superman.
I agree. One thing that we forgot to mention is throughout this entire thing, Luthor is talking to Superman. He's just because Clark mentions at one point talking to Lois that he has certain voices that he's always really attuned to. Hers is one, John, their kid, is one, and Lex is one. And so Lex knows this, and so he's constantly talking to Superman throughout this, like giving suggestions on stuff, and it's actually a really cool effect.
It is really interesting.
The another interesting thing in this story is the fact that Clark asks if he gave up on Lex too soon, because on the surface it looks like Lex is trying to repent. He has turned his company over to Superman. He wants to do good, but of course we know he's probably not.
Right.
And the other thing that we find out is Lois is kinky. She likes dressing up. Yeah. She's that also ties into one of the Action Comics, one of the more recent ones, where John's looking for something and he goes into a closet and he finds the chain suit that Clark wore on Warworld, and Lois comes running in and slams the door shut and looks all embarrassed. So she likes dress up.
Yeah,
that's fun.
So another thing I want to mention about the book is I really liked the artwork in this book.
It is good. It's different.
Jamal Campbell is a name I've not heard of. It is different. But I feel, just looking through it again, it just really complements the story really well. The colors in most cases throughout the book are really bright. And I don't know, just something about it really grabs me and makes the enjoyment of reading this issue that much more for me.
I agree. And artwork can be, it can really deteriorate your enjoyment of a comic.
Yeah.
And I will. So a good example of this is I am rereading Superman Birthright, and I really do not like the artwork. I'm still enjoying the story, but there's so much about that artwork that I don't like, the style and whatnot.
Well,
go
ahead.
Oh, no, you go ahead.
I was going to say, similar manner. I was on a podcast a couple of weeks ago called The Dingus Den, and we were talking about All-Star Superman. I don't like that book, and a lot of it has to do with the artwork. The artwork just totally threw me off and made it less enjoyable for me to read. Now, to be fair, I am not a huge Grant Morrison fan. There are a few things out there of his I like. All-Star Superman was not one of them.
See, interesting. I think All-Star Superman is fantastic.
See, there are things about it I liked. I like the premise. I like his overall portrayal of the character. Did not like the artwork, and I didn't like the execution, but a lot of that has to do with the fact that I'm not a huge fan of Morrison's writing.
Yeah, Morrison can be really hit or miss with his stuff. Sometimes he gets too cute for his own good and gets real overly philosophical in his writing. The thing with All-Star Superman, one is Frank Quietly's artwork is extremely unique. I think of some of the more modern artists, there are some that you just see them and you immediately know, oh, this is this guy. Frank Quietly is one of those. He did the artwork in Jupiter's Legacy over at Image. He did he did a few other things I'm blanking on. Alex Ross is another one. You see Alex Ross artwork and you know that this is only Alex Ross. The thing with All-Star Superman, I think a lot of times people forget, is it's really a love letter to the Silver Age. And so a lot of the ways the character is portrayed is very much in a pre-1986 mold.
Gotcha.
Because there is definitely a difference in the character before 1986 and after 1986.
Yeah, I just found the artwork. I wouldn't use the word atrocious, but just off-putting. But that being said, Jamal Campbell's work really, like I said, it added to the enjoyment of reading this because it didn't throw me off. It was a very good, like I said, a very good compliment to Williamson's writing.
Yeah, I agree. It's a more modern. It's closer to what a lot of other modern comics art does. You can tell there's a little bit of Japanese influence.
I can see that.
And it's very much a more standard style than say Frank Quietly or Alex Ross type of things. And those are styles that it takes a while to get used to. Yeah. I think once you get used to it, it works, but it does. It takes a minute. It's almost like there's with a band that you don't get until you hear like one certain song, and then you're like, oh, I get this now. It's kind of the same thing. At least that's what Alex Ross's art was for me, and to some extent Frank Quietly's.
So, was there anything about this particular issue that you did not like?
So I'm flipping back through it. Not particularly. It's not really. There wasn't really anything I didn't like. Well, Jimmy Olsen was a bit obnoxious, but he's also always a bit obnoxious.
Sure.
One thing nothing that, because I was about to tell you something I did like, which is the noise canceling headphones that Clark is wearing.
Oh yeah.
That's such a great touch.
Yeah, those are good.
But yeah, no, how about you? Is there anything in the episode that you didn't, or issue that you didn't like?
Right. So after just talking about how much I like Jamal Campbell's artwork, there are 4 specific panels that I thought were a little silly in the artwork.
Okay.
And I am referring to the 4 they're all on one page, and it is the 4 panels with the for lack of a better term, I'll call him the bobblehead Superman.
Oh.
And I just felt like that was a little silly. It was almost like, but looking at it now, I think I see what its point was. It's almost like, I think this was a commercial.
It is. So this is the Superman Corp commercial. What I like about it, because I actually love this page, there are nods to the animated series and Justice League Unlimited. There are, it's just the way that Superman's drawn is very much Justice or Superman the animated series.
It's not that I did not like the artwork, and I'm fine with silly. I just don't think that it fit the rest of the artwork in the issue. It kind of like, you got all this really great artwork, and then you've got what happened here, and then it goes back. So you're like,
I think that's the point.
I think so.
So the point is that Lex, or formerly known as LexCorp, is making this obnoxious commercial, and this is probably how Superman is seeing it, and he just thinks it's really dumb, and
I can see that. Yeah.
it's very cartoony, and that's the. I think honestly that's the point of this page, and but you're right, it is a dramatic difference between everything else in the book. That said, it did not jump out at me as abnormal. It made perfect sense to me in the story, but I can see how it's a jarring change in look.
Yeah, like the first time I read the issue, I was just like, what's going on here? But yeah, it was. But overall, I don't have any other dislikes about the issue. I like it, and I'm looking forward to the next one. But then, yeah, overall, I enjoyed the issue.
I agree. I did too. Now, I'm at this point, I'm kind of a Superman ride or die person. I have, since I started collecting single issues again in 2016. Wow, it's been that long. Yeah. I have always gotten pretty much every Superman title that comes out. And I look at the solicitations every month and I see what Superman related stuff is coming out, and I get damn near all of it. So yeah, this was a no-brainer for me because it's new Superman series. I very much enjoyed it. If we're talking like on the Meltzer scale, I would say this is like a 3.5 star issue. So it's good. It's really good, but it's not great.
Yeah. I would probably say 4 out of 5 for me anyway. I think a lot of it has to do with almost a sigh of relief because Bendis isn't writing it anymore.
Yeah, and it is so funny how quickly they have undone so much of what Bendis did. The only thing they haven't undone is de-aging John.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to do that.
No, at this point, they've established him as his own character.
Yeah,
and I have mixed feelings about John. I really liked him as a kid. I have not been super great big fan of what they've done with him aging up. His individual series was okay. It was like 3 stars probably. It was fine. It was decent, but it wasn't great. And I could definitely see how some people could find it off-putting because it very much was a message-oriented title. It did well, is my understanding. Is it for sales, for as much as sales do anymore, it did relatively well. In fact, I had a conversation with one of the guys who works at the comic shop I shop at about that book, and he was complaining because in it, John Kent is, I think, he's part of the LGBTQ community. Which of those letters is technically which he goes with, I don't know. But he has a boyfriend in the show. I keep calling it show. And so the guy who runs the shop was saying, they've really changed Superman at doing this and yada yada yada. And I'm like, okay, first of all, this character is like 5 years old. It does not have a 80 years of established canon to judge it against, and it's just one of those things. It's definitely not going to make Fox News happy if you get random panels from those issues and show them to, I don't know, Tucker Carlson or whoever the fuck. It's not going to go over well. But it was good, well written.
Yeah.
That said, I want Superman to be Clark Kent. At least in the primary universe. I think the Calvin, what's his last name? The African American Superman who is also the president, the one that was pretty much based on Barack Obama. I like that character, and the stories that character's been in have been good. there was another African American Superman on Earth 2 during the New 52. That was a cool character. He was the one that had like kind of silver in his costume. But on the primary Earth, it needs to be Clark Kent. Here are things that have to, for DC Comics to be DC Comics, Bruce Wayne needs to be Batman. Clark Kent needs to be Superman. And Diana Prince needs to be Wonder Woman. That kind of always has to be what's going on. You can have Elseworlds where there's other things going, but in the primary universe, it needs to be Bruce, Clark, and Diana.
Agreed.
All right. Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. I think we've said all we need to say about issue number 1, unless you have any other final thoughts about it.
No. Again, thank you for having me on, and
thanks for coming on.
Yeah, and if you ever need someone else, holler at me. I'll be happy to come back.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thanks, Dave, for coming on, and on this first episode of the Patron exclusive series, Comic Cuts. And come back and listen to us next time.